Hello everybody, Killer in here, and today I will be doing with Deku was Tristan, part 1. So in the, last part, or part 0, I covered Deku's backstory, and how he ended up in Inko's, house. Now, let's begin the story. Whenever Inko found Deku in front of her house, she would have picked Deku up and brought her into her house, with Inko treating Deku like her own son, basically adopting Deku and giving him the name Izuku Midoriya, as we would have a time skip. Deku being 5 to 6 years old and still in kindergarten. He was about to go home when he saw Bakugou and a couple of his classmates bullying someone else. Him trying to be the hero he is, he would have rushed in to try and help that guy that was being bullied, with Deku standing right between Bakugou and that guy that was being bullied. Him telling Bakugou that it is not nice to beat up others and that he needs to stop. Bakugou saying, "Oh really, Deku? What can a quirkless little Deku like yourself do anything to me, the king of explosions?" As Bakugou's hand would start to spark with explosions. Deku being a bit intimidated, he would say, uh, uh, I'm, I'm not scared of you, Kajan. By the way, if you're wondering why Deku is quote-unquote quirkless, it is because Deku never actually showed his demon powers or even his goddess power. So, for now, he is quote-unquote quirkless. Now, right after Deku said that, Bakugou and his henchmen would have gained up on Deku and start to beat the living crap of Deku. While Deku was being beat up, he would have looked around to see a twig on the ground. Deku, thinking that he can use it to at least try to protect himself, he would immediately run for the twig. Him picking up the twig and pointing it at Bakugou. Him saying, "Don't make me use this, Kachan." With Bakugou saying, "Oh really, Deku? What can a little twig do to an explosion?" Him throwing an explosion towards Deku, as Deku would have swung the little twig in front of himself, as that explosion would have went straight back towards Bakugou. Bakugou being surprised, as that explosion would have went straight towards Bakugou's face, it being 2 times as strong. Basically, Deku would have used full counter. And if you are wondering how, it is because whenever Deku picked up that twig, he would have had a bit of flashback. Him seeing a man with yellow hair standing right in front of him. Him having some black fire coming out from his right hand. With that man saying, "Come on, Tristan, you need to learn to use full counter like it is your second nature." Deku being confused since his name is not Tristan, as he hears his voice saying, "Yes, I know, father." Deku being even more confused, as the man with yellow hair would have fired that ball of black fire at Deku. Deku seeing himself swing a wooden sword up and deflecting that ball of black fire back towards that man with yellow hair. Him taking the ball of black fire like nothing, with that man saying, "Remember, Tristan, you can only use full counter in 2 conditions." "Yes, father, I know what those conditions are." "Well then, tell me, Tristan, just so you don't forget." "Of course, father. The first condition is it can only be used against magic attacks. And the second being, you need something in hand to use full counter." And whenever Deku heard himself said that, the flashback would have ended. Him seeing that Bakugou and his henchmen are walking closer to him. Deku, thinking that he can use that full counter technique, he would have pointed the twig towards Bakugou, and the rest you already know. Also, if you're wondering why full counter worked, it is basically because quirks were basically the evolved version of magic. Let's just say that. And if you're not fine with that explanation, the real reason is it's fun to have an OP Deku that can use full counter. Also, plot. Now, after being exploded by, Deku, Bakugou would have gotten angry, him charging at Deku with his henchmen, them starting to beat up Deku again, with Deku trying to use full counter, but whenever he tried to use it, the henchmen would have just punched him in the face, basically stopping him from using full counter. And eventually, Deku would have been beaten to a pulp, him laying on the ground exhausted, with Bakugou and his henchmen going back to the guy that was being bullied, who just gotten back up and was about to run for his life. Deku turning his head to see the guy trying to run for his life but being caught by Bakugou's henchmen and being beaten again. Deku thinking, No, stop, Kachan, as he feels something deep inside him awaken. Over with Bakugou and his henchmen, this is when they would have felt something lurking behind them, and is about to quote-unquote kill them. Them looking back to see Deku standing there with some black flames coming out from his body. Bakugou being, scared, he would have ordered his henchmen to grab Deku, them doing so, but whenever they grabbed Deku, they would have been caught on fire, them screaming out in pain and rolling around, them trying to put out the fire. But it wouldn't have worked, them continuing to scream out in pain since the place that was caught on fire was their hands, and it is spreading up to their forearms, with those two henchmen starting to cry and cry even more, them yelling for the fire to stop. With Bakugou, after seeing his henchmen crying for help and for the pain to stop, he would have been terrified, him not knowing what to do, as he trips and falls down onto the ground, him beginning to crawl away from Deku, with Deku basically just walking towards Bakugou, as Bakugou would have hit a wall behind him being even more scared as he would start to cry, him crying for Deku to stop and that he is sorry. But Deku, he just keeps walking towards Bakugou. Bakugou seeing the demon mark on Deku's forehead, him also seeing Deku's eyes, those black, emotionless, endless, dark eyes. Bakugou, after seeing those two things, he would have been even more terrified, him not knowing what to do since Deku is getting closer and closer, step by step. This is when the teacher would have arrived, her telling Deku to stop what he's doing right now, and that if he doesn't stop, she is going to call the police, as Deku would have stopped right in front of Bakugou, him whispering, "Ka-chan," as his demon mark would have disappeared, and his eyes would have turned back to normal, him falling onto the ground. With Bakugou, he just peed his pants. Also, whenever Deku fell down onto the ground, the black fire that was engulfing the hands of Bakugou's henchmen, they would have disappeared as well, it revealing that their hands are, well, pitch black, them not being able to feel anything. Now, after this incident, Deku would have been taken to the hospital and also get his quirk checked. But this is when something would have been discovered. The thing being discovered is that Deku has 7 hearts, and his blood is like nothing the doctors have seen in their entire career. As right before this creates a scene, the doctor there would have told the nurses to calm down and that they need to make sure that nobody is able to go into this room, with the nurses doing so, as the doctors there would make a call, them saying that they need a emergency meeting. The other doctors being confused, as that doctor would have said that there is a kid with 7 hearts, and that they need to discuss if this should go out to the public. Now, after the emergency meeting, it would have been decided that it will not go out to the public. And after that was decided, the doctors would have went back to their, well, positions, with Deku waking up in a hospital bed, him being confused as he sees a doctor walking by, with the doctor telling Deku what is going on. And after explaining, this is when Inko would have arrived at the hospital, her being worried that her son is in trouble and hurt. And after more and more explanation, Inko would have understand the situation, as this is when Deku would have asked the doctor if he has a quirk or not, which the doctor would simply say yes he does, him telling Deku about his quote-unquote quirk, which Deku would have been very happy, since he got not one but 2 quirks, the first one being Full Counter, the second being, well, Black Fire, or just Hellblaze. And seeing the look on Deku's face, the doctor would feel a bit guilty of not telling Deku about his, well, 7 hearts, which he does, him telling Deku that he has 7 hearts, and that he has blood no one has ever seen before, which would have surprised and confused both Inko and Deku, Inko asking the doctor what he meant, with the doctor just showing both Inko and Deku the X-ray on, well, Deku, them seeing 7 hearts. And after even more explanation, the doctor would have told both Inko and Deku that they should never tell anyone about this, which they comply. But before they can actually leave the hospital, one doctor would have walked up to Deku, him asking Deku for a blood sample. Deku being confused, as he would have asked the doctor why he needs a blood sample from him, which the doctor would just say that he needs the blood sample for a project he is doing, him also telling Deku that he already asked 6 other people to give him blood sample also, basically telling him that he is not the only one. As before Deku can even answer, Inko would have just told the doctor no, which the doctor would have been a bit annoyed, him trying to convince Inko to let Deku give him a blood sample, which he eventually does, him getting the blood sample he needs, as Deku and Inko would have went back home, and the next day Deku would have went back to school, him seeing that Bakugou's henchmen are basically armless. Deku being a bit confused, he would try and go get an explanation, but whenever he got close to them, they would immediately run away, saying that Deku is a monster and that it is all his fault. Them continuing to yell about how Deku destroyed their arms, and that his quirk is dangerous. Them also yelling about Deku being a villain and having a villain's quirk, with Deku being upset to be called a villain and have a villain's quirk. He would also be guilty for not being able to control his own quote-unquote quirk, as Deku would go back to his school activities, him being more socially distant since he doesn't know if he would lose control of his quote-unquote quirks again. And whenever school ended, he would immediately run back home, him trying to not cause any trouble for anyone. As this cycle would continue, Deku waking up, going to school, being socially distant, and whenever school ended, he would immediately go back home, do his homework and stuff like that, and then go back to sleep. With this cycle going for about 3 to 4 years. Also, in this time, Deku would have still been bullied. Well, not physically, but basically just calling Deku a villain and criticizing him. But after 4 years of social distancing, Deku's life would have been turned upside down because of one person. And that will be the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. That will be amazing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!